Q1 moment with you? Because you a bit of a nervous moment for all of us then. What happened?
No, I think the timing was off. We only had fuel for one lap of fuel, and there was still time on the table to do us cool down and go again. And big risk, and that was definitely, I think, overall not well executed. Then we executed better in the next two.
Each team has its different weaknesses and strengths, so there's, it's all to play for tomorrow. It's set up to be a fascinating race. What do you think is going to happen?
I think it'll be very, very hard to beat the McLarens or the Red Bulls, but when there's a will, there's a way. So I'll give absolutely everything tomorrow. Yeah, a little bit far behind where I want to be, but weather with this amazing crowd, who knows?
This crowd, you and this crowd, those special things together. Go well tomorrow. Thanks a lot.
What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton was less than a curve of getting pole in Silverstone? And that still, his statement was one of the most revealing of the whole season. Silverstone represents much more than a simple path for Lewis Hamilton. It is the place where its legend began to be written, where the echoes of the past rumble every time the lights of the traffic light. In 2025, that iconic circuit became the stage of an even more complex narrative, the attempt of a competitive resurrection with Ferrari, the most emblematic team of Formula One. Hamilton arrived at his house wrapped in an aura of renewed expectation, but also with the weight of demonstrating that this new stage could be more than a symbolic movement. The atmosphere was electric since Friday. For the first time since his signing by Ferrari, Hamilton led a free training session. That single image, the SF-25 marking the rhythm in Silverstone with Hamilton behind the wheel, was enough to light conversations, speculations, and hopes. It was not simply a quick lap, it was a sign. The adaptation, so far intermittent, finally seemed to find a coherent direction. The car, which on other tracks had been temperamental and difficult to understand, finally seemed to speak the same language as its pilot. However, F1 is never linear. What promises on Friday is rarely fulfilled without reservations on Saturday. The qualifying session arrived with its own demons. Ferrari, although remarkably more stable with his latest updates, is not yet a complete car. Your performance window is broader than before, but not perfect. And in a path like Silverstone, where pure speed and millimeter precision are basic requirements, any small mismatch can be devastating. Hamilton, with the determination of a veteran who still has competitive fire in his veins, built a solid session. His first laps showed consistency, measured aggressiveness and confidence that in other races had barely outlined. Everything pointed to a possible first row. The return time was there, the sectors were competitive. But the last curve arrived. A subtle subviring, almost imperceptible to the unreasonable eye, but enough to steal those needles necessary. Those tenths that, in classification, separate the protagonists of the contestants. If he was second, he fell to the fifth position. But here it has another meaning. It is the demonstration of how fine the margin is at this stage of its association with Ferrari. It is no longer about finding the base, but to polish the details. Silverstone made it clear that the potential is very close to becoming come true. That the marriage between Hamilton and Ferrari is not a utopia, but a latent possibility that every weekend is closer to realize. All this occurs in addition within the framework of an extremely close 2025 season, where McLaren seems to have consolidated its aerodynamic domain, Red Bull fights for not losing the championship train, and Mercedes tries to return strongly. In that ecosystem, every step that Ferrari takes is measured with magnifying glass. And every Hamilton action, his body language, his statements, his times by sector is dissected by a world that wants to know if this experiment can work. Therefore, this Saturday in Silverstone was not one more. It was an act of declaration. A silent message transmitted through thousandths of a second on the direction that this alliance is taking between a living myth and a team with pending accounts. The story is just beginning, but in these laps, Lewis Hamilton's statement after the Silverstone classification encapsulates everything that means competing at the highest level of Formula One. His words were not a simple post-carrier reflection. They were the distillate of years of experience, accumulated frustrations, and, above all, of an unwavering conviction in their own ability to fight to the last meter. I'll give it absolutely everything tomorrow. We are a little bit far behind where I want to be, said, with that tone measured but loaded with intention that characterizes the great competitors when they are in the prelude to a major challenge. Although the phrase was truncated in the available transcripts, which was not incomplete was his message. Hamilton does not resign, and his approach is completely put on maximizing every centimeter of asphalt in Sunday's race. More revealing was still his comment on the last round. Right up the last corner, I think I was close to the grid, but had a bit of understeer and ended up losing to 10th and a bit. In that 10th and fraction, all the modern Formula One drama is hidden. The subwiring that moved him away from the first row was not the product of a structural failure of the car, but of a very small variation in the dynamics of the vehicle that, in these conditions of maximum attack, makes the difference. These types of statements are fundamental because they reveal how much the connection between Hamilton and the SF-25 has evolved. He does not speak as a pilot disoriented by the car. Speak as someone who already understands its limits, their nuances, their reactions under pressure. These types of comments, apparently simple, are the ones that divide the champions of the great champions. Hamilton did not talk about the car as a foreign object, but as an extension of himself. His criticism of subwiring is not a complaint, it is a mental note, valuable information that will become correction, adaptation, and evolution for Sunday. This is the language of true contenders to the title. And in Silverstone, in front of his people, Hamilton made it clear that he is prepared to transform every 10th lost into an opportunity for redemption. For Ferrari, the Silverstone qualifying Saturday was not a simple day of competition. It was a turning point that can have deep repercussions on its 2025 narrative. What happened on the track was a technical validation of the steps taken in recent months, but also an emotional reaffirmation that your decision to bet on Lewis Hamilton begins to pay tangible fruits. From the moment the SF-25 left with its latest updates, especially the new floor introduced from Austria, the team has worked to convert a nervous and limited car into a more predictable and effective one. Silverstone showed that this transformation process is no longer just theoretical. It is happening, and he is doing it just when they need it most. During the 2024 season, Ferrari had shown bright moments, but his Achilles heel was always consistency. The operational windows of the car were narrow, their often erratic strategies and the pilot-team relationship felt fragile. In 2025, with the arrival of Hamilton, that pattern began to break down. The British has brought not only talent, but a method. His technical demand has forced the team to polish details that in previous years went unnoticed. And that pressure, far from breaking the team, has consolidated it. Silverstone was the proof of that new level of collective demand. The performance of the classification car was the confirmation that Ferrari has managed to expand its competitiveness range without sacrificing speed. SF-25 is no longer an exclusively effective tool in technical or high aerodynamic circuits. In a high-rhythm route and fast curves such as Silverstone, the car showed balance and power, allowing Hamilton to fight almost on equal terms with McLaren and Mercedes. That is not achieved only with a punctual aerodynamic evolution, but with a development philosophy that begins to be consistent and continuous. Diego Tondi and Loic Serra, pillars in the areas of aerodynamics and technical, have led that process. And while there is still a way to go, the base level of the car has improved, especially in its behavior in high-speed curves, where it was previously unstable. In this context, Hamilton's words and performance acquire another weight. He is no longer just the veteran looking for his last great story in F1. Now it represents Ferrari's competitive heart. His presence, his rhythm on the track and his silent leadership are generating a structural change within Maranello. From engineers to mechanics, the message is clear. If Hamilton is willing to push the limits, everyone must do it too. And that transforms a team. Because what was previously a culture of pressure and errors now begins to look more like an environment of high performance and professional demand. In the face of the rest of the season, what is coming is a strategic and technical battle at three bands between McLaren, Red Bull, and Ferrari, each with different strengths. McLaren has proven to be the strongest team in terms of race rhythm. Red Bull still retains flashes of brilliance with Verstappen and an enviable peak speed, while Ferrari, with an increasingly complete car and a Hamilton that grows in confidence, is positioned as the great disruptor. And if the team manages to continue reducing mistakes in boxes, refining strategies and maintaining their development pace, they could be not only in the fight for victories, but also by the championship. Sunday's race in Silverstone will be the real thermometer. But whatever happens, this Saturday left something clear. Ferrari has found a path. And he is touring it next to one of the most competitive and determined pilots that this sport has seen. If they manage to maintain this synergy and continue consolidating their improvements, it is very possible that we are witnessing the birth of a new era for the rampant Cavallino. What was lived in Silverstone was not simply a qualifying session with emotional dives for the local pilot. It was a silent but forceful manifesto that Lewis Hamilton has left behind any questions about his integration in Ferrari. It was not only a time for return or positions on the grill, but of clear and firm signals that Maranello's sports structure is responding to the leadership of his new reference. In a season where every 10th account, each technical gesture and each statement import, what Hamilton delivered in Silverstone was a declaration of intentions, a sign that his ambition to return to the top is not a speech, it is a plan in execution. And did not do it in any circuit. He did it at home in front of a crowd that knows his ups and downs, his glories and his stumbling blocks. There, in the British Automobile Temple, with the pressure that only that public can impose, Hamilton responded with determination, self-criticism and a remarkable ability to transform a lower error into a learning tool. That is the kind of pilot that not only adds points but transforms to a team from within. The class of figure that Ferrari had been needing for years. A winning culture catalyst. This episode cannot be seen in isolation. It is the continuation of a process of mutual maturation. Ferrari learning to build for Hamilton, and Hamilton reapprehend to compete in a radically different environment that he met in Mercedes. Silverstone marks a before and after because, beyond what the result of Sunday dictates, it has been shown that there is a base on which to build something much bigger. And if that happens, we could be at the gates of a historical narrative in Formula One modern. To the spectators who have followed this analysis here, I ask you a key question. Are we witnessing the competitive rebirth of Lewis Hamilton, or is this just one flash before another frustrated cycle of Ferrari?